Welcome to the Starzology podcast. I'm your host, Arwynne O'Neill, and today I'm here with my friend Katya, and we're going to be doing something a little bit different this time. This is part of our transit series, and it's also going to be part of our beginner series. So Katya is just beginning to learn astrology.
Yes, I am.
And she's going to be asking me some questions about an upcoming transit we have with Mars and Pluto. And this is an interesting one because Mars and Pluto are known in traditional astrology as the malefic planets, which sounds scary, but it just means that back in the day, way, way back, these planets were thought to have sort of dangerous or evil kind of connotations in the chart. When they align together, they can definitely sort of represent volatile aspects. But we're going to talk a little bit about the good aspects, the bad aspects, and what's coming up right now.
Thanks for the celestial invite, Arwynne. So stoked to learn about Mars square Pluto. First question, what are the characteristics of Mars in Libra and Pluto in Capricorn?
Great question. So starting out with Mars in Libra, I'm going to read a little quote from my favorite astrologer here, Stephen Arroyo. He wrote a lot of really super basic books. And this is what Mars means in Libra. So this is if it's in your chart or if it's transiting. Mars is all about like self-assertion. It's about your drive. It's about your motivations. It's about what, as my co-host Alison Price says, it's what gets you off the couch. Mm-hmm. So Mars in Libra asserts itself sociably, cooperatively, charmingly, and with direct relatedness. It symbolizes a desire to harmonize, and it gives you a will towards action that's cooperative. So your physical energy, if you have Mars in Libra, is going to be all about relationships and aesthetic influences. It initiates a drive that's tactful and tactically directed towards balance and fairness, which are really good keywords of Libra. So the pursuit of your desires may be hindered by indecisiveness when you weigh all of your options a little too much, but it's also great for negotiation and for cooperation. So what's interesting is that it's going to be squaring on October 8th to Pluto, and Pluto is the planet of power, transformation, destruction, and regeneration. Mm-hmm. So Mars obviously being like sort of this martial, violent energy coming up against Pluto, which is about transformation. You can see how that would be sort of conflicting, especially since Capricorn, which is where Pluto is right now, it was in Aquarius briefly, and it retrograded in June. So we've got until January of 2024, where it's going to be in Capricorn for the last little bit until it's in Aquarius for a good 20 years. So Pluto in Capricorn is all about structures, it's about government, it's about corporations, and it's about tradition. So you can see how that might be a conflict where Pluto in Capricorn might be about corporate control and about the exercise of political control, and Mars in Libra wants to compromise and make everybody happy. So that's the conflict that's set up with these two planets right now.
Very cool. Thank you. And can you describe what a square aspect is?
Oh yes, actually, that's a great idea. Let's go back and do that whole basic thing. So basically, two planets or more will form angles to each other in the sky. So a square aspect is when they're at 90 degrees to each other, and if Mars and Pluto are at 90 degrees to each other, that happens about every 15 months. So it's not an uncommon aspect, but it's not a super common one either. And Mars moves pretty quickly, and Pluto moves incredibly slowly. It takes 248 years to go all the way around the zodiac. And it's an elliptical orbit, so it spends a little bit more time in different signs. But Mars is very regular, and it's just, it's like the Earth, how it just kind of goes around and has a very, very regular orbit. So it happens every 15 months, and the exact aspect that's coming up is on October 8th. The next one's not until September 2024. But of course, there's a whole cycle that's involved. So in between that time, Mars and Pluto will be conjunct to each other. They'll be in opposition, and they'll also form trines and sextiles, which, of course, for a beginner, you're like, try what sextile, huh?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
I'm just thinking of that emoji with the brain exploding right now. I have so many follow-up questions, but
awesome.
Not sure where to start.
Well, exactly. And it's just like if you picture clock gears kind of moving. Well, the planets are basically like a massive clockwork in the sky, and they're all kind of moving at their own speeds and their own orbits. Some of them have a wider orbit, and some have a smaller orbit. It's the little machine that they discovered, the Antikythera mechanism in ancient Greece. This shipwrecked, and they discovered this amazing mechanism a while, maybe 100 years ago now, and it's been recreated by all of these scientists. And basically, it was an ancient astrolabe, which means they used it to calculate all of the movements of the planets out into, I think Saturn was the most outer planet that they knew about back in ancient Greece. So it was actually like this incredibly detailed calculator that some incredibly wealthy scientist probably owned. And they suspect that maybe Archimedes was actually the designer of it, because it really fits in with what his scientific writings are that we still have to this day. But yeah, so if you just picture all these crazy gears that are all moving at the same time, but in wildly different sizes, and it's all just sort of working together, that's basically what's happening in the sky.
This is totally satisfying my steampunkness.
It's so steampunk, yeah, exactly.
It's super cool.
Yeah.
And can you shine a light on what we can expect or what to watch out for?
Sure. So with Mars and Pluto, obviously, it is more of kind of a watch out sort of thing. And I'm going to read a quote here from Robert Hand, who is one of the other OGs of astrology. He's an amazing, very scientifically minded sort of astrologer. And this book is Planets in Transit. It's this massive, I've actually got the the paperback book on my lap as we're talking. And you can see it's enormous. So he goes through literally every combination of two planets and what they mean as they're transiting. So I'm just going to read actually a quote from him, because nobody says it better than Robert Hand. So he says, "This can be a time for creatively transforming the world around you." And this is Mars square Pluto in any signs. This isn't just in Libra or Capricorn. So this is any time that Mars is square Pluto. Transforming the world around you. Or it can be a time of fierce power struggles and disagreements. These are the two poles that the transit swings between. Like all aspects of Mars and Pluto together, this one arouses your ambitions and makes you want to get ahead. Your energy level may be very high, and you can use that to get a lot of work done. But unfortunately, you'll have a tendency to go about your work in a way that may arouse great opposition from the people you're confronting. And you may have to confront someone else's desire and ambition that may be at square purposes to yours. So that's the square aspect. It's like when you come up to an intersection and two cars are both wanting to go, and unless you have a good communication between the two, you can collide. So be sure you haven't left any loose ends in what you're trying to do up until now. This is what to watch out for. If you have left if you've left loose ends, they may trip you up and cause you to suffer defeat. So avoid the temptation to act ruthlessly or underhandedly towards others, no matter how angry you get or how much you feel they deserve to be beaten. And transit cycles involving Pluto have a strange way, he says, of producing total destruction if you take illegitimate shortcuts or if you try to take advantage of people. And this is a really interesting thing with Pluto in Capricorn, because Pluto in Capricorn is the planet, is the placement that the U.S. chart natally has. So the U.S. has been undergoing for the last 20 years, approximately, it's Pluto return, which means that Pluto returns to the place it was in the U.S. birth chart. So the U.S. birth chart is obviously 1776 when the country was founded. So a lot of what we've been seeing in the U.S., in the last, say, 15 years, has been about this Pluto return, about the U.S. really struggling with its identity as a country. The election of Donald Trump, and the attack on the Capitol, and all this stuff really has sort of made almost an identity crisis in the U.S. consciousness as a country, as a democracy, and as one of the youngest democracies in the world. It's kind of it's almost an identity crisis that you'd have at when you're in your 30s or something, and this is kind of the thing that the U.S. is going through right now. So that's the Pluto return thing. But interestingly, it says also this may cause conflicts between individuals and groups. So groups being maybe governments. So if you have something where you may be I don't know, audited or like arrested or somehow coming up into conflict with a government body or like an authority figure or a corporation or, you know, anything that is like represented by Capricorn, which is, you know, kind of the man, you'd want to really be careful. And especially for the period of like a week or two before and after October 8th in this case, or whenever in the future you may be listening to this podcast, it's usually a couple weeks before and after the exact date that you'd want to, you know, kind of watch out and maybe like really lean into the Libra side of it, which is the negotiation and the cooperation and making sure all sides are represented and not allowing your sort of desire to win.
So is it a conflict between assertion and compromise?
Yeah, basically. It is that, and it's also about wanting to fight for something. Like this will really stir up your urge to assert yourself. But because Mars is in Libra, it really is bringing in the importance of compromise and about negotiation and about partnership, instead of just trying to get ahead at all costs, which is it's anytime Mars and Pluto are in like a close and kind of difficult angle, like an opposition or a square, or even the conjunction, you'll find that there's this tug of war between assertion and sort of power structures. But I think that Mars in Libra is going to soften that a little bit in this particular case. So the last thing I would add about that is just also from Robert Hand's Planets and Transits book. He says, depending on how badly you may want something, you will have to fight for it all the much more hard, or give it up altogether with this aspect. As you strive to get ahead, you have to be careful of those in power over you. And if they're opposing you, they are probably stronger right now, especially with Pluto and Capricorn, because it is the placement of government. And you will probably lose in that confrontation as an individual going up against a more authoritative or powerful entity. And he says with other Mars-Pluto combinations, the energies can lead to being the victim of someone else's ruthlessness, and even to the point of violent assaults in some cases. So you should, around this aspect being exact, you should avoid violent places and violent people. He says it isn't likely to happen, but it's not worth the risk. So if there was any time that you should avoid like going into some place where you feel like, it's kind of sketchy, it might be dangerous, now would be the time to avoid it. It's like a couple weeks on either side of the exact aspect.
Got it. And what about people who are born with this aspect in their chart?
Yes, absolutely. So for this portion, I'm going to actually read a quote from Karen Haymaker Zondag's book, Aspects and Personality. This is a great book for beginners all the way up to like sort of, you know, intermediate astrology students. And I've had this for ages. You can see I've actually like highlighted a bunch of passages with little initials of like my name and friends and family and whatnot when I was first learning about all this stuff. So she says, Mars-Pluto aspects, and this is including all of the aspects, not just the square, but when these two planets come together, there is a wish for self-expression and to prove oneself and to make your mark. There's an almost compulsive need to show off, combined with an enormous will to power. Pluto intensifies the executive force of Mars and puts you in possession of an almost inexhaustible supply of energy and incredible resilience. The craving for power, which is Pluto, on the other hand, is activated by Mars, so we really want to take the reins in our hands, and we are fired by a boundless ambition and energy. So that's a super interesting thing about just any Mars-Pluto aspect, is like these two energies, when they come together, can really be used to get stuff done and, you know, to execute any kind of plans that you have that need like just energy and drive. But if you have like tense aspects, including the square and the opposition, these are really forceful and almost violent, volatile aspects. Everything you to do with executive ability, energy, and action is combined and intensified. And therefore, the fierceness of these aspects can run to extremes, both in positive and negative destructive ways. She says this is seen in the hard aspects when we're determined to get the most out of ourselves and out of life by doing something hair-raising, like, you know, like doing stunts or like extreme physical activities, pushing yourself to the limit, especially in sports that are physical and mentally demanding, or pitting yourself against formidable foes. And it's interesting because she talks about Mahatma Gandhi having this aspect in his chart. and going up against the government and about, just trying to change the world with the force of your will. And it's not always a violent thing, of course, because he was a peaceful protester, but it's about the mental tenacity to just not give up and to know that you're right and that you will eventually win, even if you're going up against something that seems like an immovable force. So interestingly, when I was doing research for this episode, I looked at your chart, and it turns out, completely by coincidence, because we had agreed to do this beforehand, you actually have this aspect very closely in your chart. It's not in Libra and Capricorn, but it is in your chart, and I was just wondering if you'd be willing to talk about how it plays out in your chart.
First of all, what? And this is such good timing. This means it was meant to be, eh?
Totally meant to be. Exactly.
Yeah. What does this mean?
Yeah, well, I mean, let's first say, do you have a violent temper?
Well, if you ask my husband, no, do I have? No, I really did relate a lot to that assertion, compromise, that duality.
Yeah.
I often joke about how there's in each of us, and maybe it's just inside me, that there's this inner Hulk or the inner the Dalai Lama or someone, and how do I tame that beast inside if I'm really put to the brim. But I think it's part of it has to do with that defense mechanism where it feels like there's an injustice, and that's what I need to defend. And so it's not so much that I am just randomly angry or I have a temper. It's more like it feels like there's a big injustice happening, and I need to do something about it, and I need to defend it.
Yeah. That's awesome. And that makes so much sense, because it's not just Pluto, it gets a bad rap, but it's really about transformation, and it's about using power for transformation and to promote not destruction but regeneration. So sometimes you need to destroy in order to create, obviously. But that's really interesting that you say that you have actually felt that in your life, and that injustice does rile you up and makes you feel like you have to do something, because as I'm sure you've noticed in the world, not everyone feels that way. A lot of people are just well, that sucks, life,
and I was like, wow, are you okay with this?
Right, exactly. How are you okay with this? I love that. Those are the key words I'm going to come away with. How are you okay with this? And the inner Hulk, that is such a beautiful illustration of what this aspect looks like for somebody.
Oh, thank you for turning it around and making it seem like a superpower as opposed to my Achilles heel.
For sure. It can be a superpower. And that's, Alison Price and I always talk about this on our podcast. This is why we do this, is because any aspect can be turned around to be a positive. And that's why you'd want to know about these things. It's so that you can go, oh wow, that that looks a little dodgy, but how can I use that as a superpower? How can I, even superpowers are, they're not always the greatest thing. Being the Hulk isn't a wonderful, oh cool, I can just turn into this massive green monster when I want to. It's when he gets angry and he can't control it, and then things go off the rails. And usually it's for better. It's usually to confront a bully or to win over a bad guy. But God, imagine if every time you got angry you turned into this mindless green monster. In real life, that would not be awesome. that would be very difficult.
Yeah, that would be a lot more obvious.
Clothing budget would just go through the roof too. All those shredded power suits.
Oh yeah,
totally. So Mars-Pluto aspects can also be used in a positive way in competition. And I know that there's some of that in your life. Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, well, now that you mention it, absolutely. I didn't realize how much competitiveness I am involved in, from running races to playing board games to... I can't think of anything at the moment.
Murder mystery parties.
Yes. Oh, yeah. That's coming up. So excited. But it really is a big part of my life. And you're right. That is such a great way to see how I'm using my superpower, in quotes, for good. Because, that is a healthier outlet than reaching out and punching someone, or
or just being the office dick that everybody
exactly
avoids because you take credit for their work.
And that does satisfy that need to be to tame that inner Hulk, and in the best way possible. So I didn't realize that I was already doing it so much, and I have worked towards it, and it has satisfied quite a few aspects of my life. And I'm so glad you brought that up. I didn't realize.
Well, I mean, we live in the same building, like full disclosure here, and every time I see you, you're doing something active, which is, like, I mean, most of the people in Vancouver are like, there's a lot of people who hike and bike and all that stuff, but you're always going on trips. You're always like planning some game night or like a biking trip, or just doing some different new sport, or I know you did Krav Maga for a while, which is awesome. It's the Israeli martial art.
Highly recommend it. It's a great way to burn off energy and learn a really great self-defense skill. But you're totally right. Like, I felt that I have so much energy that I do need to expend, and oftentimes the better outlet is something active or something with my hands, whether it is actually exercise, but you can't exercise every second of your life, right. And so the other part of it that's a little bit more calm and easier on the body would be listening to something calming, like an audiobook or a great podcast like Starzology. But doing something with my hands, like folding laundry or cutting vegetables, or just still something kind of active but more gentle than constant exercise.
And like, this is interesting too, because I know what you do for a living. You do acupuncture.
I sure do. And a lot of massage and a lot of cupping as well, which is so manual.
Right. But it's interesting with Mars and Pluto, thinking about, like, you're using like poking implements to heal people, like to bring about like regeneration and transformation in their muscles and in their health by stabbing them with little needles, which is Mars, like Pluto, in a very wonderful looking illustration.
That's a beautiful way of describing it. Absolutely.
I don't know if that go in your business card, poking people for transformation. But.
I definitely avoid using the term stab, but I've heard it a few times. It definitely tames my, the beastly side with some namastes.
Exactly. Using the stabbing for good. So this has been great. Just to wrap up, I mean, this is one of those aspects that people might look at and be like, oh no, this is coming, like I should, stay out of the downtown east side, or like a dangerous place, like hold your purse when you're walking home. Those are always good ideas, but it's not about, oh, something bad's going to happen. It's about harnessing this volatile energy and trying to do something good with it. And we can look forward to this in the coming days, because October 8th is fast approaching. And then if you're listening to this in the future, the next one is September 2024, and it's approximately every 15 months after that. So do you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, now that, since we've talked about this duality of, assertion, compromise, that's something that's really stuck with me recently is I've been watching this show called Foundation. Ooh, fabulous show.
I've heard about it.
Excellent. Even if you're not into sci-fi, have to give it a try. One of the quotes that really struck me, and it's possibly because it's between this daughter and father, they have this really wonderful relationship, but ever since she was a little girl, he's always told her, violence is the last refuge of the incompetent.
Nice.
And even as I just said it, like, I got goosebumps. And I just really like how it's so powerful in a way of, you can, breathe deeply to calm yourself, but seeing it as a way of, like, what else could you do? Like, what other creative outlets can you harness this, I guess, temper, this volatile side. And I've been thinking about that quote quite a bit, and I kind of like where it's taking me. It feels like I'm on a self-awareness journey.
Amazing.
And all because of a show.
It's great advice for anyone. If you find that you've resorted to violence, you've already failed, whether you win or lose the fight.
All
right. I mean, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for joining me.
Arwynne, this has been such a stellar and enlightening conversation. I've learned so much.
Amazing. Thanks so much. And thanks to our audience for listening. We're going to be releasing shorter podcasts like this every week now. So you can look forward to hearing the Starzology podcast every Sunday and every Wednesday. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for getting this far through the episode. I just want to take a moment to tell you about the two main options of my astrology services. So the first one is coaching. If you are an aspiring astrologer, and by that I mean someone who's perhaps a hobbyist astrologer or someone who's learning astrology or a student, or you've got a few books and you've been doing it for a while, but perhaps you need a little bit of help to bring it all together, then maybe getting some astrological coaching from me would be the answer for you. The astrology coaching I offer is a 1-hour session on Zoom, and it's tailored to answer your particular questions. For example, if you have issues with natal chart readings, we can go there. Or if you're having problems working with your forecasting, we can go there. Or even basic astrology stuff, or even getting yourself organized for your astrology business. The idea is that astrological coaching will answer your particular questions. It's tailored specifically to you and where you are in your astrological journey. And I'm happy to help you out with some guidance about how you can get going, what to focus on, and what to dismiss. So that would be the astrological coaching for people trying to learn astrology. The second astrological service I offer is consultations. So this is for someone who perhaps doesn't know anything about astrology, but they just want to have their chart read or get their chart done. Call it what you will. So once more, this is a 1-hour consultation over Zoom. I will interpret your chart, tell you about the main features, tell you about where the energy is flowing, and all the rest of what is entailed in a thorough natal chart interpretation. I can also add in some forecasting in there too, bearing in mind we only have 1 hour. So just in summary, I've got coaching for people who want to learn astrology, and I've got consultations for those who want to get an astrology reading done. I'm Alison Price from Starzology.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.